Hey everybody, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I need to zen out pretty bad, but tonight I want to tackle something, kind of mishmash things. Before I do that, you're having tummy trouble. These are the DNA drops. This is a detoxer. This helps your gut health. This tastes like orange. And this is for indigestion. There's a lot. There's a lot of drops, and they're working for me big time. So if you have some health issues and you don't want the grocery store nonsense that is tainted right now, please email. It's in the drop box. Please email, because I can help you. And if you're needing an opportunity to make some side cash, although I'm still not, but that's another way to go. It's an avenue to go. These are amazing. They're game changers. For real. So before I begin, I did a whole episode. I only did two of the tablets from the Emerald tablets. And I did those two particular ones because of what's happening around the world right now. And although we're now finally seeing things go down or just be like put on a halt, I mean, a lot more is going to come out about the truth. It's just a matter of like when it's disseminated to everybody. But the spiritual war that we're actually going through right now is not that discussed, because a lot of truths hurt. A lot of things that you grew up with and you are like adamant that it's right, we were lied to. We were lied to. A lot of things are lies. Just about everything is a lie. They hidden a lot of this content from your eyes because they don't want you to know. And there are a lot of us who don't buy into mainstream anything. And that's not to say mainstream religion is bad, but a lot of us that incarnated for now have the eyes to see outside of the paradigm that was given to everybody. And I'm one of those people who just never latched on to anything, questioned everything, never bought into a lot. And I had a really rough mental night the other night, thinking I only have like 8 days until some of my bills are due. I don't have anything to pay them, and I'm freaking out because I'm a good person. I pay everything on time. This is the first time this has ever have happened to me. And yes, I've been unemployed for 4 months. I've saved enough money up until this point, and now it's just gone. And I'm doing my best with, I mean, my nails, I don't have nail polish remover, guys. I mean, I'm an artist. I could paint over my nails enough, but it still cracks off. So, I, instead of crying, I'm trying to sit in my head and think, what could I do that's not a scam? Because that's all people send me is like, oh, you want to invest, oh, you want to do this. Like, I want to work. My expertise is in education as a para. So I know how to dig into a kid to understand, like, why is that kid flipping tables over, getting really frustrated and angry. Most of the time a kid can't verbalize why they feel that way. And then when you ask, well, what is true, you have to find the trigger. You have to go deep down and understand why a kid's reacting. They don't have the vocabulary and comprehension we do. But when you understand that they get reactive because they can't do something in school because school's very competitive. Kids make fun of each other for not getting it, even though we try to, all the kids, we are understanding, especially the last 3 years, a lot of kids are off. A lot of kids are not mentally there, especially with things going on at home, changes, wearing a mask, they're not getting enough oxygen. And I'm sorry, that's just facts. Whether you want to like that or not. I know I lost I have a lot more teeth problems because of that. I brush with charcoal toothpaste and alkaline water. But that's where my expertise is hands-on with children. I'm not a fast typer. I'm not somebody who can solve problems on, even with training. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. The whole customer representative going in and figuring out where your package is. I mean, I could do that. That's just not my passion. And I don't want to start a second. This is the second career that got kiboshed on me. I love what I do with children. And I want to get back to that. And that's where my expertise is, besides art and reading, all this stuff. Anyway, so going through all that madness, I'm getting kind of further into my favorite German philosopher. When I'm in that mindset that I just don't want to be here anymore because I'm over it, I didn't ask for this to happen to me. I reach out to all kinds of people thinking that someone will have an answer to my problem, and I just keep sitting on the phone lines for hours getting told, well, we're still waiting. My unemployment, still not happening. The money I'm owed, still not happening. There's a reason for it, and I'm just going to leave it up to Creator to fix this for me. I left my life in Creator's arms and let that happen. But I read a lot of philosophy when I'm in that mindset. And then I had to stop because it was getting a little too above me. And so then I swapped over to my rereading of The Law of One. And I mean, spirit syncs very well with me when it comes to my books. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to read Tablet 1. But before I read Tablet 1, we're going into The Law of One and what Ra has to say about Atlantis. How fun is that? Because The Law of One's 5 books and it's a lot of reading, I read this a long time ago with separate books. I had the little mini books and then I sold them out. So I didn't have copies of the actual books. So having the anniversary set and it being hardcover, I'm like, let me go reread what I read a long time ago. And to my surprise, after doing tablet 3 and 6, the wisdom and magic, and the what's happening in our world right now with the temporal war, with the evil, with the darkness and the light, and that we need love and understanding and wisdom, and we need to stop a lot of what's going on in our world. The law of one was like, well, you need to know where it all started. So here we go. The law of one. And I just want to get, I believe this is session 22, February 10th, 1981. So the questioner is asking about the cycles of planet Earth, like what started at the beginning, what souls were harvested, what souls weren't, who came here, what souls were inhabiting here. And just for a little bit of a reference of what this particular channeling was about. So here we go. Questioner. Who or what group produced this call, and what action was taken by the Confederation? Ra. The calling was that of Atlanteans. This calling was for what you would consider, what you call understanding, with the distortion towards helping other selves. The action taken is that which you take part in at this time. The impression of information through channels, as you would call them. So, to back up, the Atlanteans, whatever story you want to believe, whether they came from Mars, Maldek, came down and crashed here, or there's another theory out there, the Game of Thrones theory, that these beings are from beyond the wall that breached over the ice wall, if flat Earth, donut, to torrid Earth, with the Taurus field. Whatever you want to believe, they did exist. These people, that's us, technically, some of us, like I was saying in the last time, they're here, okay? Now, Atlantis was destroyed. They destroyed it. But at the earlier stages of their having to come incarnate and then learn their lessons, they reached out for help to upstairs, the Confederation. You can call it the Galactic Federation, you can call it whatever you want. The higher level Etherian beings, they called out to. But it wasn't, I don't really think it was Ra's group in particular that helped them out. It could be. Because they helped out in Egypt, and another group, another social memory complex helped out in South America. But let's keep going. Was this is questioner, was this first calling then at a time before Atlantis became technologically advanced? Ra, this is basically correct. Questioner, then did the technology advancement of Atlantis come because of this call? I'm assuming that the call was answered to bring them the law of one and the law of love as a distortion of the law of one. But did they also then get technological information that caused them to grow into a highly advanced technological society? Ra, not at first. At about the same time as we first appeared in the skies over Egypt, and continuing thereafter, other entities of the Confederation appeared onto Atlanteans, who had reached a level of philosophical understanding. Shall we misuse this word, which was constant with communication to encourage and inspire studies in the mystery of unity? However, requests being made for healing and other understanding, information was passed having to do with crystals and building of pyramids as well as temples, as you would call them, which were associated with training. So like Egypt and places all around the earth, a lot of these things were built for healing and resonance of frequency and not worship and idealization. Questioner, was this training the same sort of initiatory training that was done with the Egyptians? Ra, this training was different in that the social complex was more, shall we say, sophisticated and less contradictory and barbarous in ways of thinking. Therefore, the temples were temples of learning rather than the attempt being made to totally separate and put upon a pedestal the healers. Questioner, then were there what we call priests trained in these temples? Ra, you would not call them priests in the sense of celibacy, of obedience, and of poverty. They were priests in the sense of those devoted to learning. The difficulties became apparent as those trained in this learning began to attempt to use crystal powers for those things other than healing, as they were involved not only with learning, but became involved with what you would call the governmental structure. Now a lot of the downfall starts making sense from an outside perspective, being Ra. Oh. Questioner, was all of their information given to them in the same way that we are getting our information now through an instrument such as this instrument? Ra, there were visitations from time to time, but none of importance in the, shall we say, historical passage of events in your space-time continuum. Questioner, was it necessary for them to have a unified social complex for these visitations to occur? What conditions were necessary for these visitations to occur? Ra, the conditions were two: the calling of a group of people whose square overcame the integrated resistance of those unwilling to search or learn. The second requirement, the relative naivete of those members of the Confederation who felt that direct transfer of information would necessarily be helpful for Atlanteans as it had been for the Confederation entity. Questioner, I see. Then what you are saying is that the naive Confederation entities had the same things happen to them in the past, so they were doing the same thing for the Atlantean entities. Is this correct? See how time keeps cycling and cycling, and events keep happening and reoccurring with different populations and peoples. Ra, this is correct. We remind you that we are one of the naive members of the Confederation and are still attempting to recoup the damage for which we feel responsibility. It is our duty as well as honor to continue with your peoples. Therefore, until all traces of distortions of our teaching learnings have been embraced by their opposite distortion and balance achieved. Questioner, I see. Then I will state the picture I have of Atlantis, and you tell me if I'm correct. We have a condition where a large enough percentage of the people of Atlantis had started at least growing in the direction of the law of one and living the law of one for their call to be heard by the Confederation. This call was heard because using the law of squares, it overrode the opposition of the Atlantean entities who were not calling. The Confederation then used channels such as we use now in communication and also made contact directly, but this turned out to be a mistake because it was perverted by the entities of Atlantis. Is this correct? Ra, this is correct with one exception. There is only one law. That is the law of one. Other so-called laws are distortions of this law, some of them primal and most important for progress to be understood. However, it is well that each so-called law, which we also call way, be understood as a distortion rather than a law. There is no multiplicity to the law of one. This will be the final question. Questioner, can you give me the average lifespan of the Atlantean population? Ra, the average lifespan, as we have said, is misleading. The Atlanteans were, in the early part of their cultural experience, used to lifespans from 70 to 140 years. That's 70 years old to 140 years old. This being, of course, approximate. Due to increasing desire for power, the lifetime decreased rapidly in the later stages of civilization, and thus the healing and rejuvenation information was requested. This is the conundrum we're all finding ourselves in right now. As a planet, when people find the truth out, you don't have to go by my words to know this, but cancer was man-made. AIDS was man-made. A lot of different viruses were man-made and unleashed onto the population. Not to our agreement or consent. They were done behind our back with our money, though, nonetheless. There is technology and things to help with everything going on that's been suppressed over 70 years from us. Mind you, we're immortal beings. And mind you, many of us were in Atlantis. Mind you, many of us were all different types of entities on this planet, on other planets, on this side of the wall, on the other side of the ice wall, who knows? But we did live those lives. And we kept coming back to third density after we already made it through first, made it through second. Now we're in third, and we kept reliving this like loop in this cycle, being recycled back over and over again for soul lessons and moving and soul lessons and more soul lessons and more Many of us have seen a lot of life on Earth. And I'm sure a lot of you watching as well. Where we need to be very, very vitally careful is that we're not going to repeat their past with the information. It's true. So this is session 23, February 11th, 1981. There's not much to this. Just to keep it on a shorter side, but there's a couple of things on Atlantis that I do want to touch upon, and then I'm going to read the tablet one. Questioner, you were speaking yesterday of the first contact made by the Confederation, which occurred during our third major cycle. You stated that you appeared in the skies over Egypt at approximately the same time that aid was given to Atlantis. Can you tell me why you went to Egypt and your orientation of attitude and thinking when you first went to Egypt? And this is raw now. At the time of which you speak, there were those who chose to worship the hawk-headed sun god, which you known as a vibrational sound complex Horus. This vibrational sound complex has taken other vibrational sound complexes, meaning Horus, the spirit entity, that was one of his incarnations, but that wasn't one, like he and many other people have been different people of importance before that. The object of worship being the sun disk represented in some distortions. We were drawn to spend some time, as you call it, scanning the peoples for a serious interest amounting to seeking, with which we might help without infringement. We found that at the time, the social complex was quite self-contradictory in its so-called religious beliefs, and therefore there was not an appropriate calling for our vibration. Thus, at that time, which you know as approximately 18,000 years of your years in the past, we departed without action. So Ra goes on to say basically that the people weren't interested, that he showed up in this crystal ball bell-shaped craft. If you're into the UFO stuff, you should be looking out your windows and up every night, unless you have chemtrails. He talks about the Great Pyramid. Again, the pyramid being healing. There's more about Atlantis. Just trying to find it. I found it. And it took me a little bit. Sorry, guys. So this is the questioner. In the last session, you mentioned that in the last 25,000 year cycle, the Atlanteans, Egyptians, and those in South America were contacted, and then the Confederation departed. I understand that the Confederation did not come back for some time. Could you tell me of the reason, consequences, and attitudes with respect to the next contact that with those here on planet Earth? In the case of the Atlanteans, enlargements upon the information given resulted in those activities distorted towards bellicosity which resulted in the final second Atlantean catastrophe, 10,821 of your years in the past, and you measure it as you measure time. Many were displaced due to the societal actions both upon Atlantis and upon those areas of which you call North African deserts, to which some Atlanteans had gone after the first conflict. Earth changes continued due to this, what you would call nuclear bombs and other crystal weapons, sinking the last great land masses approximately 9,600 of your years ago. In the Egyptian and South American experiments, results, though not as widely devastating, were as far from the original intention of the Confederation. It was clear to not only us, but also the Council and the Guardians, that our methods were not appropriate for this particular sphere. Our attitude thus was one of caution, observation, and continuing attempts to creatively discover methods whereby contact from other entities would be of service, with the least distortion, and above all, with the least possibility of becoming perversions or antithesis of our intention in sharing information. So, yeah. What took the Atlanteans out? They destroyed themselves. They blew themselves up with high-tech energy, with crystals, which I do believe we are now finding down in the Bermuda Triangle area. And if you understand all the way back when, the land masses were not where they are now. And I think even that's the deception, that we're going to find out that our map is not what we really think our map is. Just saying. Look who's behaving today. But you have to understand that that technology that we have now, that nuclear kind of stuff, was given to us by the Orion, the bad, malevolent group. The difference in what's going on now is that our free will was breached, to say the least, because treaties and other things were signed, regardless of who signed them, and it wasn't Eisenhower, in my belief. I don't believe he signed the Grenada Treaty at all. Sorry, guys, it's like really cold. Oh no, she's getting up. I don't believe that Eisenhower signed, and I believe he inherited a lot of things that he was like, I don't know what to do. That technology was given to the Earthlings, and we've had some not okay things happen that warranted them to come back. And when they found out that things were infringed upon, that the masses never consented to any of this, and people were at the conscious level that they could come back. And I'm not talking about raw social memory complex. They came back through Carla in the 1980s, and people are still continuously actually channeling Quo I think into the 2000s, up to 2011, I think people still channel Quo and Hitan and Latwii. There are some people that can get into Ra, but I think their social memory complex moved up another density. But people still are able to get in contact with these guys, but they're not the only social memory complex helping. That's one. There's others, like Ross said in the Law of One, there was another group that went to South America. So there's a lot of groups. There's a lot of people helping right now. And it's our future selves up in the sky, showing us they're here. It's just now a matter of, hi, some of us are, I know I signed up for this suffering. I get it. But come on now. The goalposts have been moved. By goalposts, I'm talking about timelines. Because I think a big chunk of element of time travel has been messing up a lot of things. We're, a lot of us, especially those who are unfortunately in communistic states and countries with you do this or you lose it all kind of deal. It's what they wanted. That was the plan, to divide and conquer. What they're not showing you on the media is the masses of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in all the other countries coming together, and every day they're marching along. Every weekend they're going to their Capitol buildings, they're moving through their cities, screaming that this needs to all stop. How much further are you going to lie? So, us reincarnated Atlanteans and Lemurians, this is heavy on a lot of people, because whether you're consciously aware of it or not, you're kind of remembering what happened back then, and now it's repeating, but things are actually going to get better. But they destroyed themselves. And we are very, very lucky right now that there was intervention on many, many good, benevolent ends. And I have my theories who Thoth incarnated into. So I'm going to read Emerald Tablet 1, The History of Thoth-The-Atlantean. And I'm going to do it in the same way I did the other one. I'm going to read Thoth first, and then I'm going to read the commentary second. I, Thoth-The-Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti, set down from the guidance of those that are to come after, these records of the mighty wisdom of great Atlantis. In the great city of Kior, on the island of Andal, in a time far past, I began this incarnation. Not as the little men of the present age did the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from aeon to aeon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward. A 100 times 10 have I descended the dark way that led into light, and as many times have I ascended from the darkness into the light, my strength and power renewed. Now for a time I descend, and the men of Chem shall know me no more. But in a time yet unborn, will I rise again, mighty and potent, requiring an accounting of those left behind me. Then beware, O man of Chem, if ye have falsely betrayed my teaching, for I shall cast ye down from your high estate into the darkness of caves, from whence ye came. Betray not my secrets to the men of the north, or the men of the south, lest my curse fall upon ye. Remember and heed my words, for surely I will return again, and require of thee that which ye guard. I, even from beyond time, and from beyond death, will I return, rewarding or punishing as ye have requited your trust. Great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me. Knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to earth's youth. Wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with power, drawn from this eternal fire. And all of these, greatest among the children of men, was my father, Thoth-Me, keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light who dwell within the temple and the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands, mouthpiece after the 3 of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the kings with the voice that must be obeyed. Grew I there from a child into manhood, being taught by my father the elder mysteries, until in time they grew within the fire of wisdom, until it burst into a consuming flame. Not I desire, I but the attainment of wisdom, until on a great day, the command came from the dweller of the temple that I brought before him. Few there were among the children of men who had looked upon the mighty face and lived, for not as sons of men are the children of light, when they are not incarnate in physical body. Chosen was I, the sons of men, taught by the dweller, so that his purpose might be fulfilled. Purposes yet unborn in the womb of time. Long ages I dwelt in the temple, learning ever and yet ever more wisdom, until I too approached the light emitted from the great fire. Taught me he the path of Amenti, the underworld where the great king sits upon the throne of night. Deep I bowed in homage before the lords of life and the lords of death, receiving as my gift the key of life. Free was I of the holes of Amenti, bound not by death to the circle of life. Far to the stars I journeyed, until space and time became as naught. Then having drunk deep of the cup of wisdom, I looked into the hearts of men, and there found I greater mysteries, and was glad, for only the search for truth could my soul be still, and the flame be quenched. Just a very interesting note, because I'm into the Norse mythology, theology stuff. Even though Odin didn't go to such a hall of Amenti, Odin hung on a tree called Yggdrasil, the tree of life. Took his eye out and drank from a mirror's well of the wisdom. A lot going on there. So I am going to, so we keep it fresh. Let's read the commentary and then I'll pick up from Thoth again. The passing of Thoth into the halls of Amenti was not the change we call death. He merely placed his physical body beneath the ray of force, later referred to as the cold flower of life, where it would be preserved indefinitely. As Thoth, he would not return. But while his body rested in suspended animation, his consciousness entered many bodies and lived many lives. In some super soldier alien people that know about that stuff, like the Matrix, where your essence is in your physical body's in a pod and then your soul is sent down into another body. Avatar. And if you go back and watch the interview with my friend Chad, he tells you what's on the moon, like in suspended animation. I think Thoth is still in animation, in suspended animation. And I believe his soul is incarnated into somebody as a teenager right now. I can't say who, but he's on the Alliance. Pior was a city of the priesthood of Atlantis. On Undal, the island just opposite Unal, there were two cities, or rather two divisions of one great city that covered the island. The island was entirely surrounded by terrace walls and divided across the center by a high wall. Pior faced Unal and was occupied by the priesthood, while the other side of the island was known as Shan and was occupied by the philosophic and scientific groups. No one was allowed on either part of the island except by pass signed by the leaders of a group. The mighty ones refer to where the adepts of Atlantis, and these were 13 in number. I'm not going to say this. Thoth Mears, father of Thoth, was head or chief of the 13. They operated on the principle of what later became the Great White Lodge. They knew the way to the halls of Amenti, where for a time they would lie beneath the flower of life and rejuvenate their bodies. Pirates of the Caribbean. When they went off the edge and then it flipped and they were in another reality. Just a thought. Just putting that seed in there for you guys. Unlike the masters, they did not leave their bodies there while they incarnated in other bodies, but only bathed in the fire of life and renewed their bodies. Thoth himself had descended to Amenti 1,000 times to renew his body. And as this was necessary about every 50 years, Thoth was approximately 50,000 years old at the time of writing. He was 20,000 years old at the time of the sinking of Atlantis. Therefore, the writing of the tablets must have occurred about 20,000 years ago. Thoth lay his original body beneath the flower of life to be taken up again when he desires and sends his consciousness into other bodies through birth. He says definitely that he will rise again in flesh in a time yet to come. I think that time's now. Just saying. This time mentioned is spoken of later in the tablets when the invaders from outer space attack the Earth. This is why I'm trying to connect the law of one to here. The secrets which were left were the great ship of war beneath the Sphinx, also spoken about in the Keys of Enoch. See how I'm tying everything I do together? Like, because all is one. All is one. The men of Chem or Egypt who were left as guards have faithfully fulfilled the command and still guard the secrets. The arcane wisdom he gave them has enabled them to protect the secrets from the people who came after. The people of Thoth were not the mass of Atlanteans, but the group which lived on Undal and comprised the scientific, philosophic, and priest class. They had learned to seek knowledge at its source, the Akashic records. The children of light came among them at times and taught them wisdom, which enabled them to take the next step forward. And this is what I feel is the social memory complex is coming to them as the children of light. The power of the eternal fire was the fire of the universal consciousness. Thutmose, father of Thoth, was a high priest of Undal, the mouthpiece of the children of light and the dweller of Unal, to the kings and people of the islands. Thoth was taught the mysteries which had been retained in the secret archives of the temple. He had developed in the past to such a degree that he readily grasped the truths which were taught to him. The desire for ultimate knowledge aroused such tremendous forces and placed him on such a plane of vibration that the dweller became conscious of him. The dweller did not have the form or shape that man has now, but occupied a body similar to the body's occupied consciousness during the earliest part of the first cycle, the globular body. The light and force emanated by such a body was too great for the average human to stand. Only a consciousness on a high plane of vibration could stand it and still remain material. The dweller could see in Thoth one who is ready to have the spark of light fanned into flame. The arousing of flame brought to Thoth life stronger than the life of an ordinary man. For as he grew in knowledge, he was shown the path in the halls of Amenti, where the flower of life force of this planet is concentrated. Standing before the lords of life and death, he received the key of life and death, with power to take up life or lay it down at will. With the attaining of power over life and death, Thoth was able to lay down his body and at will travel to the farthermost extensions of time-space. Okay, so I'm gonna go read from Thoth now, and then we'll go back to the commentary. Down through the ages I live, seeing those around me taste of the cup of death and return again in the light of life. Gradually from the kingdoms of Atlantis, past waves of consciousness that had been one with me, only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star. In obedience to the law, the word of the master grew into flower. Downward into darkness turned the thoughts of the Atlanteans until at last let me reread. Until at last in his wrath arose from his Agwanti, the dweller. There's no English equivalent. Speaking the word, calling the power deep in earth's heart, the sons of Amenti heard and hearing, directed the changing of the flower of fire that burns eternally, changing and shifting using the logos, until the great fire changed its direction. Over the world then broke the great waters, drowning and sinking, changing earth's balance, until only the temple of light was left standing on the great mountain of Undal. Still rising out of the water, some there were who were living, saved from the rush of the fountains. Call to me then the master, saying, gather ye together my people, take them by the arts ye have learned of far across the waters, until ye reach the land of the hairy barbarians, dwelling in the caves of the desert. Follow there the plan that ye know of. Gathered I then my people and entered the great ship of the master. Upward we rose into the morning. Dark beneath us lay the temple. Suddenly overrose the waters. Vanished from the earth until the time appointed was the great temple. You know what that time is? Now. Alex Collier and Lena Denon were speaking about the ark. That's been found. There are a lot of different arcs around the planet, but I have a very huge hunch, and I'm hoping that some of you who are watching this kind of know where I'm going with this hunch, that they found some components of Atlantis, and they found this. I also feel that the halls of Amenti is in inner earth. I don't feel that Atlantis was in our perceptual view before the flood, but I feel the halls of Amenti is in inner earth, because inner earth has their own spaceships that come out. Mount Shasta, big place there, mind you. I think this is a time, and if we are noticing that there is a lot of earthquakes, whether you want to feel them or not, they're happening. The buoys are going off. The volcanoes are going off, and there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons for why that's happening. A lot of them are being man-made, like man's causing them to go off, because what's going on underneath, not in Agartha, excuse me, inner Earth or Gotha, it's not because of anything down there. It's where we still have 3D and what's actually underneath many of our cities and under the oceans and things that you didn't ever think existed does exist, and they are flooding them and burning them out. A lot of people find this content like conspiracy theory, especially people who are new to the content. But you got to attach this content to what's happening physically in our like sub density of 4D now. Because a lot of people just read this and out of interest, a lot of people are now figuring out that this is actually coming back, and it's not to haunt us. This is an amazing thing. This technology that we're getting a second shot at, the Atlantean Lemurian technology, is coming back. But it's on our free will to now use it for the positive and for love and light. Yes, there is a balance. You have to have a balance. But at what point do you take the seven deadly sins, as you want to call them, and apply to everything that's happening now in our world? I bet most people don't realize how many of those sins are committed on a daily basis through themselves. And no one's perfect. And there's levels to it. But the biggest thing I'm seeing is greed and power. No one should ever have to worry about their living environment, their food, their well-being, their pursuit of happiness. It's a birthright that everybody inherited. But yet we were perpetually caught in the enslavement of the negative beings. It's just really interesting. We're going to go to the notes here. Then I'll go back to Thoth. With the attaining of power over life and death, Thoth was able to lay down his body at will and travel the farmost extensions of space-time. After tasting of the wisdom of the cosmos, he found that it was centered in the hearts and minds of men, that he found greater mysteries, for it is through men that the cosmos extends into unexplored territory. Thoth was born about 20,000 years before the sinking of Atlantis, but because he had accepted a particular work, he did not pass on as others did with great gain, who had gained the first illumination. Those who had been around him in youth passed on to Venus to be replaced by a wave of consciousness from Mars. It's in the Law of One. Swear, it's there. I'd have to go dig and find it, and it's not too far from where I was reading, but it's here. It's in the Law of One. Just saying. The later wave of consciousness was such that they could not be trusted with the science and wisdom of the earlier Atlanteans, for they would have misused it. The dwellers spoke the word of power, which was heard by the lords of the cycles dwelling in Amenti, and they, hearing, directed the balance of the earth into a new channels, causing the land to sink, carrying with it the science and knowledge which the mass of people had. This knowledge, through nothing in comparison to the knowledge of the children of light, was yet too great to remain in the hands of undeveloped ones. The flower of fire, not the flower of fire of life, but the pyramid of cold fire, which is the balance of earth. The temple of light was not the temple of Unal, but the outer temple of the priesthood of Undal. The temple of Unal was never referred to as a temple, but only as the gateway or place of the dweller. Knowing of what it was composed, it was never thought of as being a subject to destruction, and was therefore not considered in the sinking. Only a few of the wise men of Undal were left living when the rest of the land sank. The land of the hairy barbarians in the land now known as Egypt. Shem was the first of the learning established by the Atlanteans. From there, they were later sent emissaries to other barbarous tribes in different parts of the Earth's surface. This was the plan mentioned to use the Chem as a central home of the new race wisdom. The ship of the master was a ship capable of traveling between planets and was armed with the weapons that could destroy every living thing on Earth's surface if used at full power. In the atmosphere, it was driven by atomic motors, but outside the heaviside layer, it could be moved by thought, not only between planets, but into any space, and the mind of the pilot could be visualized. Its structure was such that its materiality raised or lowered the vibration as the will of the operator commanded. If you've ever listened to Elena Denon talk about how Thorhan, the Palladian commander of the Galactic Federation, drives his ship, it's the same. Same technology, different in they don't use atomic. They've moved up way higher in technology, but they use their consciousness. And it's just a thought away. Like, I can imagine being on Jupiter and I zip there. Quantum snap, boom, you're there. How sick would that be? I want a spaceship. I do. Okay, we're gonna go back to Thoth. We're almost there. Promise. Fast we fled toward the sun of the morning, until beneath us lay the land of the children of Chem. Raging, they came with crudgels and spears lifted in anger, seeking to slay and utterly destroy the sons of Atlantis. Then I raised my staff and directed a ray of vibration, striking them still in their tracks, as fragments of stone of the mountain. Then spoke I to them, in words calm and peaceful, telling them of the might of Atlantis, saying we were children of the sun and its messengers. Coward I them by my display of magic science until at my feet they groveled, and then I released them. Long dwelt we in the land of Chem, long and yet long again, until obeying the commands of the master, who while sleeping yet lives eternally, I sent from me the sons of Atlantis, sent them in many directions, that from the womb of time wisdom might rise again in her children. Long time dwelt I in the land of Chem, doing great works by the wisdom within me. Upward grew into the light of knowledge, the children of Chem, watered by the rains of my wisdom. Blasted I then a path to Amenti, so that I might retain my powers, living from age to age a son of Atlantis, keeping the wisdom, preserving the records. Great grew the sons of Chem, conquering the people around them, growing slowly upward in the soul force. Now for a time I go from among them into the dark holes of Amenti, deep in the holes of the earth. Before the lords of the powers, face to face once again with the dweller. Raised I over the entrance a doorway, a gateway, leading down to Amenti. Few there would be with courage to dare it. Few passed the portal to the dark Amenti. Raised over the passage, I, a mighty pyramid, using the power that overcomes earth force. Deep and yet deeper past I, a force house or chamber. From it carved I a circular passage, reaching almost to the great summit. There in the apex set I the crystal, sending the ray into the time space, drawing the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amenti. Other chambers I built and left vacant to all seeming, yet hidden within them are the keys to Amenti. He who in courage would dare the dark realms, let him be purified first by long fasting. Lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber. Then reveal I to him the great mysteries. Soon shall he follow to where I shall meet him. Even in the darkness of earth shall I meet him. I, Thoth, Lord of wisdom, meet him and hold him and dwell with him always. Builded I the great pyramid, patterned after the pyramid of earth force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. In it I build my knowledge of magic science so that it might be here. When again I return from Amenti, will I sleep in the halls of Amenti, my soul roaming free, will incarnate, dwell among men in this form or another. Hermes. Possibly. Emissary on earth am I of the dweller, fulfilling his commands so men might be lifted. Now return I to the holes of Amenti, leaving behind me some of my wisdom. Preserve ye and keep ye, the commander of the dweller. Lift ever upwards your eyes towards the light. Surely in time ye are one with the master. Surely be right ye are one with the master. Surely be right ye are one with all. Now I depart from ye, know my commandments, keep them and be them, and I will be with you. Now, interesting, before I go into a commentary, Ra claims that when he was in a physical form in Egypt, they used sound, frequency, resonance, ether to build the Great Pyramids. Now you have to ask, was Thoth a part of that too? And was he just an incarnation of a social memory complex? So commentary, just food for thought. As Thoth left the island of Null, although he does not mention it, Undal had already sank. The great temple or place of the dweller also sank, but was not destroyed. The barbarians, upon meeting Thoth and his followers, the Atlanteans, attempted to kill them, but were struck motionless by a paralyzing ray from Thoth's staff or rod of power. This rod was capable of transmitting or casting forth hundreds of different manifestations of force directed by the will of the holder. The apparent supernatural power of Thoth caused the barbarians to submit to him, and his statement to them that he was a child of the sun is the basis for the worship of the sun among many ancient races. Thoth was, of course, referring to the spiritual sun. It took many years to establish the new seat of the children of the sun. But when this was completed, emissaries were sent to other races to teach and guide them. As time passed, Thoth found it necessary to open a passage to Amenti for the renewal of his body. For even though filled with power after hundreds of years, it began to disintegrate. This was necessary because his work was not yet finished. After a long period of time, the barbarians of Kem developed in consciousness until they could go forward without the aid of Thoth. Thoth plans to enter the halls of Amenti and place his body under the flower of life, while his consciousness goes elsewhere. The entrance to the Amenti is below the great period of Cheops or Khufu, built by changing the atomic structure of the stone until it became very light, and then after in was a place changing it again. Beneath the pyramid is the force room connected with the apex of the pyramid by a central shaft or well. In the upper portions of the shaft is a lens or crystal through which rays from the force chamber are directed. These were bent into time, space, and curving open a dimensional pathway from beneath the pyramid to the halls of Amenti, which through in concurrent movement in space-time with Earth exists in its own space. The hidden chambers are the ones spoken of the book of the Great Pyramid. Their sarcophagus connects with the central shaft. When one lies in it a specific length of time, his body is transported down the shaft to the central force chamber. The knowledge of this was preserved in later years, but debased into a ritual of initiation. It was first necessary to coat the body with a certain ointment for the occupant to be transported, and the knowledge of this was not retained by the later Egyptians. The Great Pyramid is indestructible. If its inner parts were disturbed, forces would be let loose by the guardians, which would destroy anyone or thing which came against it. Thoth later incarnated as Hermes and as other great teachers through not always on earth. Thoth leaves with the statement that those to come after will, in time, be able to thread the same path. helping and guiding you into the light. Now before me opens the portal. Go I down the darkest of night. So, why is it important that we reread these things? And then put it into the context of the here and now, which I'm trying to do with everything that I've been reading or rereading. Because when you read something for the first time, you're just reading it as to read it. You're not applying. Most people don't apply the things to it because you still need to read it to understand it and comprehend it. But after you read certain things, and then you keep the things going on now in the world in the back of your mind, it's important to know the damn past. And it's super important to connect all those dots. That's a lot of dots to connect. I believe, me personally believe, that Thoth is incarnate now on planet Earth. I believe many of the Atlanteans who are emissaries are also present on Earth at this time. Again, the law of one has everything to do with the Emerald Tablets. And so does the Keys of Enoch. And so does a Waspe. And even a Rancha. And even if things are not correct in terms of manipulation and evil spirits and the dark ones, and even with the Enuma Elish, Yaldabaoth, and all of that stuff, that came before it. Seriously. Cycles of Earth. Atlantis was way before a lot of those things even came into the context of our knowing. Way before Yeshua decided to incarnate and try again to teach the law of one. For some reason, you just keep getting infiltrated. And even though, yes, we're at the density of self-awareness, which does create the ego, which does create a lot of this back and forth, understanding oneself, going through things, learning about yourself. And yes, we all exhibit different things. We could be prideful, we can be sinful, we could be lusty, it's just to understand what we are. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't. You're supposed to experience life the way Creator wanted you specifically to experience it, because that is a perception he needs to understand. Creator, energy, whatever you want to call it, the monad. You are a person on this stage playing a role out for Creator. Very important that everybody kind of grasps that. And as you incarnate, even like like it says, like Thoth is incarnating into different vehicles, and we all do. I was probably a man a couple, like the last life I lived, I was probably a male. Because I resonate more with men than I do with females. For real. And when it comes to being a female, I was mostly, in the majority of my lives, a female. And on the shaman, the healer, the oracle, what have you, always had that kind of role. Now, going even further back, who knows? I was probably an Atlantean. Most likely. I don't doubt it. And I don't doubt that half of you were as well. We're here reliving out karma that we need to repair. And how do we get to repair it? By making this world a better place. How do we do that? Well, we need to start thinking different ways of doing commerce and getting food and making this world a better place. I shouldn't have to worry about bills. No one should worry about bills. It's very hard for many people right now. There's a lot going on. And the one thing that we need to start really applying to our consciousness and to upgrade and to receive the upgrades, we're getting them from upstairs. Whatever interdimensionally, there's a lot of energy coming at us constantly. For real, it is coming. You can't deny it. You don't feel good. Everybody's on an emotional, like, lunacy, for real. I mean, I'm having, like, the dark night of the soul times 20 million. Like, I'm back at square one. What the hell do I want to do with my life? I had this 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, when the same thing happened to me at my first career. I almost died. Physically almost died at my last job. And no one was there to help me. I went to 1,000,005 lawyers. No one cared. No one wanted to touch the case and the situation with a 10-foot pole. So I was left like, what the hell do I do? A door eventually opened up for me, and then I entered into the last job with helping children. And I loved that job. I did not like the indoctrination that was happening. I wasn't for it. I didn't enforce it. I didn't, I did my job as asked, but I didn't implement anything that had to do with the things that I'm against. So I stood my ground. I didn't do something. Sorry, guys. Somebody's thinking about me because my nose is like viciously itchy. So now I'm here again. What the am I going to do? I make creations. I make epoxy resin fun stuff. I love doing that. It's a passion of mine. I love making artwork, but artwork takes a lot of money to make. The supplies are not cheap. Nothing in this world is cheap right now, believe me. And, I ran out of epoxy resin. So what am I going to do? I can't afford it. I have other bills I have to pay first. So it's like, what do I do in the meantime? But I just don't want to land on something and then get stuck. And then I'm back to square one again, and it keeps repeating. So I'm trying to break this ridiculous cycle that I'm in. a lot of us are facing this right now. I believe it. A lot of people are in this. I lost my business. I was in the restaurant business. I lost it to what, all that's going on right now. A lot of people are experiencing, with the weather, everything was destroyed and now they have to pick the pieces of their life up. That just doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. So a lot is going on, but now we have to think forward as we're rebuilding the earth. Think of this as the time of Atlantis. It is being destroyed. What do we do moving forward? How do we create a new society? How do we bring everybody together? But we need to know from the past in order to move forward, so we don't make the same mistakes again. And I'm really, really thinking about, when I'm reading these books, what can you contribute to society? Are you a gardener? I know plenty of people who love to plant and garden and create food. We have farmers out there, but all the food has been GMO'd and destroyed. Even the seeds have been implanted with really dangerous shit. So how do we restart and revamp that cycle? Is there technology to get that nonsense out of the seeds, to grow actual seeds that are not poisoned and genetically modified? How about the water? There are people that know and who are inventing these products that are getting it telepathically sent to them. There are many videos coming out now of children that the last 3 years are talking out, that are like close to just graduating high school and college now, or not going to college because they didn't do something. And they're speaking out that you destroyed our lives. And by a lot of people not standing up and being in the fear, destroyed these kids' lives. We owe it now to these kids to make the earth a place that they're going to want to make kids and grow old on. And I know many of us are in a I'm in the midst of my life. I'm not done living my life. I'm not at the end of my life. I'm smack down in the middle of life. And I even feel gypped because I had to be poisoned. I had to be a lab rat. I'm a result from being a lab rat. And I didn't get to live my life fully. I didn't have the opportunities to have a family. Whatever that comes down to, I didn't have the opportunity to live the life that I wanted. I had other factors happening. I'm not an asshole. I took care of my parents for 13 years. My mom especially. My father I took care of, but I was in college. Not easy. Giving up your life to take care of a parent. Not at all. And then watching them die. Be murdered, number one. That my mother was murdered. Just things to think about. Things I want everybody to start thinking about that watch me. We have to know these link. These link. They link. So does the Keys of Enoch. It links. The things that they're finding, I mean, it's not mainstream, but you can find the information. Other people are discussing it. Super Soldier Talk, Elena Denon, Dr. Michael Sala, they're talking about the arcs. They're talking about the technologies. There's remote viewers that are seeing things in Antarctica. You know, whether you want to do the flat earth, the not flat earth, the toroid, or the globe, it doesn't matter. These things are being found. Like in the Law of One, they were talking about Easter Island. And who placed the stones there. And it's not of good. Sadly. The baddies put them there. But how long ago was that? A long time ago. A long time ago. There are remnants of things from 50,000 years ago still in our view that are existent today, that weren't taken out by floods, or all the changes that happened in our planet for 50,000 years. But we now have to get that technology. We have to learn about it. We need to focus in on what is coming in the golden age, what is to be, with all the changes going on. It's at their reign, these evil these evil people, their reign of terror is over. We're just in the death throes. They're rolling around like a, alligator. They're not getting nowhere. It's over. And it's up to us to create a better world. Now it's for us to decide how to do it. But we need to remember what took them out in the first place. Why Atlantis went to shit. They used technology that was no good, that would have destroyed the planet. We can't do that. So now we need to make a conscious effort to start loving and understanding not just ourselves, but everybody else. For the most part, the majority of us are human beings. And we need to apply that knowledge throughout time space. Because once we're really up in 4D, time does not exist, and neither does time-space continuum doesn't exist. There's no time. Everything is moment by moment. And a lot of people will be repeating 3D. A lot. And they'll be joining their, they'll be reincarnated with our pets once they pass. I know when my kitties pass, they're going to be human. They earned it. But just think about what you can do. If you're in a position like myself, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, how, and what direction to do everything. I need money. I need the 3D nonsense until it swaps over. Who knows when that's going to happen? So right now, it's just like, think about what you can contribute to society, what skills, what you could do whether it be rewriting history, which is something I would like to be doing. I would love to do textbooks of just what the hell happened and let's rewrite it to the proper history so the kids know the truth. It ain't going to be pretty on any country's side. I'm telling you that much. Other people are going to rebuild the infrastructure. Other people are going in the medical field. You're going to be healing everybody with different types of technology. There's so many good things that can come, but we all just need to start manifesting it and letting it happen now and not waiting. I'm sick and tired of waiting. And I'm trying my hardest to get the message out. All right, I'm ranting on way too long. Sending every one of you love and light. Remember, if you can help me out, that'd be appreciated. All that's going to be linked down below. If you are on Telegram, I've been posting some really interesting stuff. You can find me at AllyKatzkreations211. It's the same thing. I try to keep everything consistent. Unfortunately, Instagram isn't. And if you find me on Facebook, send me a message. I talk to a lot of people. You can email me. I do get back to people within a day or two. I'd love to chit chat. Keeps my spirits high. I hope all of you have a really great week moving forward. And I'll be pumping a little bit more videos out because I don't know what's going on if I could pay my bills. And I want this up. I want to be able to keep doing this. So until next time, guys, have a good one.